So welcome everybody to the Self-Belief series part 4. I'm really excited today to introduce you to Michelle. Michelle has had an incredible transformation. When I reflect on when I met Michelle back in 2017 and I look at her now, it's really amazing to see the change in her. And really a lot of people who know me now didn't know me back in 2016. So they don't really know what I used to be like. And I really can see a lot of similarities between the transformation that Michelle has had and my own personal transformation. And so it brings me a lot of joy to see how happy she is and how much her life has changed. So welcome, Michelle. It's so great to have you here. Thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. I'm so excited. It's like I've come full circle on my journey.
Yeah, it's nice to be talking about this in reflection. So let's start with the story of how you actually found out about me and sort of what was going on at the time that led to you even, I guess, being interested in reaching out to me. Tell us about what was going on in your life back when you first heard about the Soul Pleaser program.
Oh my goodness. Okay. So I am a nurse, and back in 2016, I remember feeling like I was at rock bottom and I was struggling. I was working so many shifts, up to 7 shifts a week, nursing. And I just felt so burnt out. And I remember just thinking, I've got to get through these 8 hours. I've got to get through these 8 hours. And I've got 3 beautiful children and a beautiful supportive husband. And I was not coping. I was coming home and pouring wine every night because I was just so frazzled. And I disconnected from everyone. I was just living in survival mode. And the beautiful Carla, who you interviewed last week, had started your program, and she was obviously a few weeks in. And, people don't share just how low they are. And even though Carla and I were really good friends, I didn't tell her how I was feeling. And she hadn't told me, that she was struggling as well. And somehow we got chatting and she said, I'm doing this course, because she started showing up really differently and her energy was different. She just looked so much more alive. And we started talking about it, and I said, I need to meet this Tracy and I need to do something like this. So that's when I reached out to you.
Yeah. So the shifts that you were doing, tell everybody a little bit more about that, because I don't think people really understand the stress that is put on nurses, particularly in the emergency department and particularly in the environment that you were in. Obviously, without giving anybody's personal details away, but if you could just share a little bit about the sort of things that you were seeing and the pressure that you were under. So it wasn't just about the number of shifts you were doing, but even the type of work that you were doing then.
Yeah, so I'm such an empath and I just feel so deeply. And at the time, I didn't have any boundaries around where my energy was going. And I remember saying to you, Tracy, I go in and I give my all. Like, as soon as I connect with a patient, I'm all in. Doesn't matter, what they're here for or what's going on. And I had so many shifts in a row, well, just sort of strung along within a short period of time. One of my patients who I had was fairly new to triage. So when you first present to emergency, you sign in and tell the nurse what the problem is, and then you wait to see the doctor. And one of my patients was suicidal, had expressed that he was suicidal. And I could feel this from him, that he was in a really, really dark place. It's that empath, feeling. And I did everything I could to get him seen and through the system and as quick as possible. And I made sure, I had a doctor that I knew was going to be onto it and got him seen. And I left feeling like I'd done okay, that, this patient was going to be in good hands. And the next morning, he was married and had children. And the next morning I found out that he had committed suicide. He went home and did it. And it just rocked me. It just rocked me because I felt so deeply. And, know what? At the time, like my workplace just gave me a slip and said, go and ring a counsellor, and that was as far as it went. And I tried to have some counselling over this, and it was just not helping. If anything, I was feeling worse. And so I go in, 2 weeks later, and another shift. I had a young girl really brutally hurt by her parents, and it was just tragic. And I look back now, and I can feel myself getting my heart rate going, because it was just horrible what this poor little girl was put through. And there was just multiple shifts like that I was showing up, trying to do my best, but just leaving feeling like I'd failed, and feeling just so down and out, and just wondering, how can this happen? And how can I help more? But I couldn't. And I remember saying to you at the time, Tracy, I've got this, I've got to do something about this. And you really sort of helped me sort of step back and say, you're doing everything that you can.
Yeah. And I reflect on that. And I remember, first of all, feeling so blessed that you'd come to me, because Soul Pleaser was really born out of my mum's passing. And my mum was a registered nurse right up until she died. And so I have such a connection to nurses. I just love nurses, and I love the fact that it's a vocation and that you're called to it. And you use the word empath now, and it's probably not necessarily the language you would have used back then, but you've learned so much about your energy. And I realized that I was a physiotherapist, you're a nurse, and quite often empaths, people pleasers, people who really care, are called to help other people. And I think that is our calling, and we love to help people. But absolutely, you didn't know how to handle your sensitivity to energy. I think that sensitivity to energy is a gift, because our guidance system is our emotions. And so to be sensitive to your emotions means that it's an opportunity for you to do something about your emotions. But the state that I was in before I knew all of this, and the state that you were in when you came to me, you didn't know what to do with your emotions. You were feeling them in such a big way. And that's what I could really relate to when you got so upset. When I was studying to be a physiotherapist, I was in the hospital for my sort of year where you're practicing, and we had to do lots of different sections. And I was looking after the stroke ward, and I had a patient who had these beautiful bright blue eyes, and she couldn't talk verbally, but somehow I felt like we communicated by looking at each other. And I used to really look forward to seeing her. And I came down to the ward, and I went into her room, and she wasn't there. And I asked a nurse where she was, and she said, oh, she died. And I just burst into tears. I was like, I'm a useless physiotherapist, because obviously I can't be crying all the time every time someone dies, but you just feel that connection very strongly. And what I loved was that you never gave up. You were determined to learn how to be able to remain an empath and be able to continue to help, but to be able to do something with your energy. And I said to you, because later on down the track, you had this story where you had learnt some techniques from Soul Pleaser, and you'd learnt how to control your alignment and your vibration and your energy. And you'd gone into an environment where you were completely calm amongst the chaos, and you were able to identify what had to happen, and it saved a child's life. So if you'd have just walked away from nursing because it was too stressful and it was too hard and you were too exhausted by giving all your energy away, that gift wouldn't have been there for that child. Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I remember, because I didn't understand why I was so highly sensitive and so tuned in. Like, I knew I could feel other people's energy, and I knew I had some sort of intuitive knowing, but I didn't know what it was until you helped me sort of become aware. And like one particular shift, I walked in and this woman was hysterical. Like she was, wasn't able to breathe. The ambulance like dumped her in. Doctors were in trying to hold her down, and she was screaming, saying she had chest pain. That's all she could say. And I've gone in and I just knew that there was something else going on, and the doctor's trying to get a needle in her arm. And I'm like, whoa, can we just stop? And I managed to push them out. And I saw this tattoo on her shoulder. And I said, what's that? And she just started to slow down and to talk. And she said, that's my little girl. She died 6 months ago. And it was her daughter was 2 at the time. And she said, my heart is so broken. And that's what she was in for, and everyone's jumping on her saying, oh, she's having a heart attack, or she's, having an anaphylactic reaction, whatever, there was all of this medical stuff going on. And I just knew that that was not the case. And once I trusted in that, and, you were sort of guiding me through going, this is a gift, because I was numbing it down, every night with alcohol. I'm like, I can't do this. I was just so elevated. I couldn't sort of drop into it, I guess. And then once I started to trust this and put a boundary around where that energy went, it was like this beautiful gift just dropped in. And I several times now, I've been able to go in and just stand back while everyone's, ripping stuff out and, equipment out and stuff's going everywhere, is just to sort of stop and take a breath, and then be able to sort of really methodically say, right, we need this, let's do that. And that's happened a few times now. And yeah, one of them was a little boy who had bilateral really severe pneumonia, and he ended up really, really unwell in intensive care in Brisbane for a good 2 weeks. And his mum said to me that no one else, she'd presented 3 times and no one had sort of realized how sick this little boy was. But by the 3rd presentation, he was in, respiratory arrest, and it was like boom, 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 boom. I just was able to manage that situation and get him just in the nick of time.
Yeah. And that tuning in is available to all of us. We can all get those signs, and we can all have that knowing if we're calm enough to be able to let it in. And when we first met, you were in this heightened state all the time, like the cortisol was just pumping through your body. And, for those of us who don't work in an emergency, we can only imagine that that's how many of the nurses feel. And I remember that you saying to me, I'm not the only one that goes for the glass of wine as soon as I get home, because you're just looking for that sense of calm. And a lot of us turn to food or alcohol or drugs or anything to be able to feel better when we feel like it's out of our control. And one of the results of doing Soul Pleaser and then attracting a health coach into your life as a result of Soul Pleaser, you actually were able to change your habits around wine. I know that this is really relevant to a lot of people who will watch this. Tell us about that. How did that happen? And then we'll talk about the state of your body when you first started doing Soul Pleaser as well, because it's all tied together. When we let go of ourselves, we just go for anything, don't we, to be able to feel better. So whether it's wine or food or all of it.
Yeah. So I think after I'd done the Soul Pleaser course, it was like, I'm feeling clearer, but I knew, and I was really tuning into that, the energy and, that sort of intuitive gift. And the next part was the habit of the wine. And that's what it had become. It had just become that natural go-to that. And because I was so highly adrenaline, I lived on adrenaline. That's what happens. You get into emergency, and you've got, and all of us do, everyone who works in that place, so we all do. It's just that adrenaline overload. And so to try and come down off that and come home and be mum and a wife and, drop back into that was so hard. And so I ended up reaching out to a personal trainer who was probably, she was in her mid-40s, the same as me. And she was able to sort of help me look at my fitness really, and drew up a program with me and said, I really want you to start to go to gym and lift some weights, right? And I was like, weights, you don't weightlifting. I thought you just had to run and that's how you get fit. And, because at this stage I was so bloated and feeling really yuck. I'd put on 12 kilos from, I guess, all of the wine and not eating right. And she wrote me up a program and I started to go to gym. And what started happening was this incredible, it was like my mind just cleared as soon as I got in there and started to lift the weights. And I said to you, I don't know what's happening. And you were able to explain it. And you said, well, what it is, it's like a form of meditation because you're focused, you're breathing through the weights and you're counting. And isn't that what meditation is? So pretty quickly that started to have, I knew then that if I felt to feel good would be in the gym. And my husband was like, right, you need to go to gym. Like if I'd get home from a shift, he'd be saying, Shell, just go. And he'd be like handing me my gym bag because he knew that that's what I needed. And I really quickly got into this routine of, going to gym 4 days a week, and the clearing of what it's done for my mind. And the byproduct of that was losing this weight and toning up. It was just, so beautiful.
Yeah. And it's an amazing story. And I think that a lot of people try to do that first. A lot of people go for the action first and it doesn't last. They start a gym program and they fall off the wagon, or they give up wine for a while and then they fall off the wagon. I've had another lady come through Soul Pleaser who's given up alcohol. And I think if you do the inner work first, then it comes through inspiration rather than pushing yourself to do something. And that's the order that you did it in. You sorted out everything that was causing you to be so stressed. And then you were able to naturally reach out to a personal trainer, but actually do what she suggested, which was such a beautiful outcome. The other thing that you mentioned when you were talking about the state that you were in when we first met is you said you were disconnected. And this is such a great way of explaining it. And when you came to me, you didn't realize that you were disconnected to your soul. You felt disconnected to everyone, to your husband, to your kids, to the community, to the friends, the other women in the town. I think you were fairly new to the area and you felt excluded, from a group of women. And all of those things were really doing havoc in terms of your self-confidence. You felt excluded and like you were an outcast. Can you talk more about that? Because I think a lot of people can feel very isolated, and it's because they've become disconnected to their soul, but it feels like they're disconnected from their reality and their circumstances.
Yeah, that was, I think we're a few years in, probably 4 years into our move from Melbourne to Queensland. And I just didn't feel at home. I just didn't feel like I belonged anywhere. And there was, stuff going on in the community, and he said this and she said that. And, it was just like nonsense looking back. And I got so caught up in it all. And everywhere I turned, there just seemed to be just upheaval everywhere, and I thought I'd come home to hide away from it all. And, my husband and children, it was all just a big mess. And I thought everything around me is falling apart. What is this life? Is this what I've signed up for? Because I just, even the kids' sporting clubs, there was stuff going on in there. And I thought this is not how it's supposed to be. But because of that inner turmoil that I was feeling, that just reflected everywhere around me. All of my relationships, my relationships at work, I was, having problems at work. And it was just like, it had all just manifested through that whole disconnect, really.
And it's amazing because you can see it for that now, but you can imagine people and you at the beginning when you came to me, it felt like those things needed to be fixed. You know, at the time it was like, but she said this about me, or, you know, they're doing that. And it feels like that. It feels like life is happening to us. And it really knocked your self-confidence because it felt like people were judging you. But in actual fact, it was a reflection of your relationship with yourself. And we see this so often that when we feel bad about ourselves, then we just get evidence of that from the outside world. And the other thing, of course, is that the cortisol and the adrenaline and the rush that you had at work and the feeling of things being out of control came home as well. And then that was reflected into every aspect of your life. But one of the big things that turned around for you is that not only did you start to get along better with people at work, you actually were able to be an example to them. And this is one of the things that a lot of my clients ask me is once they start to feel better, they kind of want to teach it to other people because they feel like this is such a better way of living. But you started to get nurses reaching out to you, asking you what you were doing. So instead of being the one that you thought wasn't accepted within the nursing group, all of a sudden people were noticing that you were calmer than them. Can you remember that change that happened at work for you?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. And I'd been on my little journey, you know, with Soul Pleaser and then with my personal trainer. And all of a sudden, I just had people saying, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing, Michelle? You look so different. Your skin's, you know, glowing. Your eyes are so bright. You're really on the ball at work. Like, you know, I was just in the thick of it in resus. And while everyone else was, you know, in panic mode or whatever, I was just able to be calm. And I just had so many people reaching out saying, what's going on for you? Like, what have you done? Yeah. And
Yeah.
I got a lot of that. And I kept saying to you, everyone's asking what I'm doing. Like,
yeah. And I was so excited about this. There's someone knocking at my door and they're just not going to give up. Everybody.
You're right.
Thank you. Great. Thank you very much. Bye. Sorry, they can see me. They can see me through the window, so they don't give up. So I was so excited about this because, as I mentioned at the beginning, like I just love nurses and I just loved the idea that somebody could make this change through Soul Pleaser, but then go into an environment like that and be an example. And a lot of people ask me, even when they're in the middle of Soul Pleaser, is I don't know what my purpose is. I don't know what my calling is. You know, I feel like I want to help people, but I don't know how. And I say to them, just keep doing the work on yourself and it will show up. And before you even thought, oh, maybe I could help nurses asked you for help. And that's really how the Happy Healthy Nurse was born.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So I had a couple of nurses starting to reach out to me saying, what are you doing? Can you teach me? And I kind of, you know, was like, oh, no, it's not something that I can teach. And as I sort of, you know, kept going on my journey, I thought, no, there is something in this here, because what I was hearing then at work was, you know, all of the nurses saying, oh yeah, 9:30 finish. I wonder if the bottle-o's open. And they're all talking at the desk saying, I know which bottle shop's open. This one is if you drive down, you know, on that road. And I started to hear all of these conversations and realize that I wasn't, you know, I was no longer in that space. And there was still so many, you know, that were struggling and relying on wine or food and showing up half, you know, at 50% rather than 100%. But they'd been doing this for so long, just like I had. And so that's when it was like, oh, I knew then what I needed to do. And yeah, I embarked on the Healthy Happy Nurse.
Yeah. And it's just so exciting to me because if you think of the flow-on effect, you know, just one example of when you're an alert, tuned in, aligned, happy, vibrant nurse, and somebody comes in, that could be the difference between life and death, compared to the nurse that's completely stressed out, got problems of her own, had a few wines last night, not fully there, not at her best. You know, that could be when things go the wrong way. And so for you to not only change the lives, help change the lives of those nurses and their families, but also all the families that they impact, there's just such a flow-on effect. You just don't realise how many people are being impacted down the track as a result of the work that you're doing. So how long have you had the Happy Healthy Nurse now?
So March 2020, so just over a year. Yeah, it took me a long time, as you know, Tracy. I started writing the program based on, you know, the steps that I had taken myself through. And so many times I wanted to give up. You knew that. I was like, I'm not doing this anymore. This is way too hard. It's way bigger than me, but I just had to trust the process and just slow down, because once I knew that this was what I needed to do, it was like this fire was in my belly and I had to get it out there. So I launched it in March last year, but I've sort of tweaked a little bit now, because I found that not just nurses want to do this work. I've had, you know, so many women through this program now that are teachers, that are, you know, working mums, their own businesses. So predominantly, yes, nurses, but so many other women are coming through now too.
Yeah, it's fantastic. So your self-belief story went through stages. So when you came to me, it was about you getting your belief back in yourself, just in general, you know, in terms of being able to live the life you were already living with self-confidence and belief and trust in yourself. And then when we did Purpose Prosperity together and you were learning how to set up the Happy Healthy Nurse, there was like, I want to do this. Oh, I can't do this. I want to do this. I can't do this. You know, it was just like this one step forward, two steps back. Who am I to do this? You know, I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy. What will people think? You were still struggling with that sometimes. You know, you'd do a live on Instagram and you'd be worried about people's opinions. And so it's one of the, I kept saying, this is one of the best personal growth things you can do, is to step out in the world and start to really follow your calling no matter what. Because I remembered thinking the same thing when from people pleaser to soul pleaser dropped into my head. There was no stopping me, but there was a voice in my head going, people are going to think I'm weird. Like I was a physiotherapist. There wasn't anything sciencey about the title, you know, and there were people that made fun of me. And so you really doubt yourself. So do you still sometimes have any moments of doubt, or are you mostly confident all the time about your business?
Oh, yeah. So, oh gosh, I remember that so many times I was wanting to give up, and just as you, like you said, as you go through that journey and just keep going, just keep showing up. And, you know, I remember just saying, no, that's it. I can't do it anymore. I'm not doing it, because that little voice, yeah, who are you to do this? Who do you think you are? There's all those things that go through your head. And as I just kept going, that became less and less, to the point where now I'm just that I just look back and think, wow, was that really like a couple of years ago? But it was really only then. But I'm so different now. And at times I feel like, yeah, I do hear that little voice come up and try and sneak in, but I'm so aware of it now. I'm like, I hear you. It's just fear. It's, you know, it's all good. Don't try and rock this boat, because it's all about connecting back into your soul. You know, you teach that, connect back in. What, you know, what's that passion? What's your purpose? And there's always that ego or fear, or, you know, not self, whatever you want to call it, that wants to sit there and hold you back. So, yeah.
And I think that is the way that we continue to grow, is that we continue to have that next level that we move to, where the little voice will come up, can I do this? And it's just a matter of saying, yes, I can. And I think it's all about the focus as well. Whenever you said to me when we were working together, I can't do this, I would say, tell me about one of the ladies that you've helped. And then your energy would completely shift and you'd be like, well, this is what she was like. And now since she's been working with me, this is what she's like now. And it was all worthwhile. And that's all you have to do. And this may have happened to you, but this used to happen to me when I thought I was going to give up on Soul Pleaser, is I would talk to what I say is God. I say, God, I'm not doing it anymore. And then about half an hour later, I would get a text message from someone in tears saying how it changed their life. And I was like, all right, okay, I'll keep going. I get it. Has that happened to you? Do you ever get someone reach out right when you're kind of like, oh, and then someone reaches out and says, thank you?
All the time.
Yeah.
All the time. And I remember you saying, Michelle, look, just keep going, see how you feel. Don't decide anything yet. Just wait, And then I'd get a message, and it'd be this big, long message from someone saying, I've been watching you, your journey has inspired me, And then I'd say, Tracy, look, and you were like, yeah, that's the sign that you're meant to keep going. And so that kept happening all the time as well. And I started to pick up, hang on a minute, yeah, I'm meant to be doing this. I'm getting these signs, I'm getting these little messages that would just drop in at the right time when I was ready to hand it over and say, I'm not doing it. Yeah.
Yeah. And so it's interesting about the exaggeration. Like I always joke about how I used to catastrophize. And so that's why I was the perfect coach for you, because when you used to come to me and it was a catastrophe, I was like, I get it. Like I remember being like that, where we just kind of exaggerate worst case scenarios. So rehashing a conversation, just feeling sick about it and making all these assumptions about what the other person's thinking and, blowing it completely out of proportion. But it sort of makes sense that if you are here to make a difference, which I believe we all are, and it's all in our own unique ways, and it does not have to be attached to income or career or a business or anything like that, is that we will quite often be very sensitive to energy, which means we feel our emotions a lot. So we feel them in a big way, and that can be both negative emotions and positive emotions. And so the thing that I really notice in you, which I notice in a lot of Soul Pleaser graduates, is this calmness. Like your energy just feels so calm. And when you came to me, it was just all over the place. Do you feel that people are drawn to that you feel calm and that people notice that? And that's why people, reach out to you and feel like they want to work with you?
Yeah. Definitely. So like I was so high on adrenaline that everything just seemed to be a big deal, and there was always stress, and I'm like, why am I always so stressed? Why am I always attracting all of these stressful situations in, but I was attracting it all in. And as I've been able to sort of work through and connect in to myself at that deeper level, it's like it is this beautiful, calm space. And I know now that I can drop into that anytime I want and just tune in, and all of that chaos and all of that, just melts away. So it's something that it's definitely taken me a long time to learn and really attune to, but so different.
And I think that's what's so lovely about having a coach, is because it felt like while you were learning how to be able to tune in and connect, that it was hard because you had years of old habits to break. Because your default was stressed and highly strung, getting to calm took some practice. And so for you to be able to show up to me totally stressed out, like going crazy, and for me to be able to go, it's okay, remember, and just remind you. And now you obviously are doing that with your own clients, being able to do that for them.
Yeah. And I think, now it's all about unlearning those that stress. It's just, really trying to quieten everything down and unlearn all of the habits and the chaos that we invite in, and, all around us, society, Facebook, there's so much coming to us, notifications, and everyone wants a piece of us, and emails. And life just becomes so quick and fast and rushed, and and then I'd go into work and do a 10-hour shift, in amongst the chaos. So I had to quieten it all down, and that's, I guess, what I teach now is just unlearning though, and peeling back all of those things that we're so reactive to, I guess. And that was definitely what I was doing.
Yeah. It's completely how you could summarize the transformation, going from reactive to creative. And a lot of us think that creative means that you have to be creative, like you can paint a picture, but we're all creative, and we're creative in the sense that we're creating our experience of life. And so if we want to create a calm environment, then we turn the TV off, we turn the social media off, we turn the radio off. We only tune into what it is that we want to be exposed to, because we know it's good for us and it's good for our energy and it's calming. And we develop a morning routine, and that sets us up for the day. But then we become aware of our emotions and we do something about it when we feel like we're getting off track. And it just takes practice, and it's really normal to fall off the wagon and you haven't failed. I think it's probably the biggest question that I get. I was doing so well, but I've gone backwards. And I say, you can't go backwards. You can't ungrow. You've just fallen off, and you just have to get back on again. And that's what I helped you do. And now you're able to do that yourself. And now you're helping other people do that.
Yeah, definitely. And the routine's a big thing as well. Like just learning, tuning into what has calmed me and helps me calm and helps me sort of, release all of that adrenaline and cortisol floating around the system. And just tuning in. Like the big one for me was the routine, which, I've really teach as well, but I didn't have a routine. It was just like, shift work and winging it and racing in the door and, eating, and everything was just such a rush. So slowing down. And it's like we slow down, but we actually speed up. Yeah.
You become so much more effective. Once you slow down, what you're actually doing is so much more worthwhile and more productive, that you do less and achieve more.
Definitely.
Yeah, absolutely. So if somebody was in a place where they felt like they didn't have a lot of self-belief, and they're inspired by your story, what do you think are the first steps? Like, where do you start if you're in chaos and, you lack confidence? What would you suggest that somebody does first?
I guess it's like, for me, it was really having that awareness and acceptance. And that is, definitely one thing I teach in my program now, is when we fully accept where we're at and just face it and say, even though I don't like this, but this is where I'm at. And that was what I had to do for myself. I had to look at the big picture and say, I was probably an alcoholic, as much as I don't want to admit it, but I heavily relied on, wine every night. And it wasn't just one, it was a lot. And I had to look at that and say, this is not okay. And I'm not going to stand for this anymore. You either, don't do anything about it and whinge and struggle, or you face it and accept it for what it is, and don't, judge yourself heavily, because that was the cycle. I'd go into guilt and shame, and then I'd, I'll try again tomorrow. And then if I didn't succeed, I'd, judge myself, and I'd be so critical that I'd end up, drinking again. And it was just this cycle. And so I think it's just having that awareness and acceptance around where you're at, and it's okay. Like, it's totally okay, because there's only up from there, and you get to do something about it. And the next step, I'd say, would be to decide what is okay, what you're going to be available for now? Is it going to be living this way, or is it going to be living another way, a way that you dream of? Because that way is so available.
Yeah. And I think knowing that it's possible, I spoke to a lady the other day and I said to her, basically she was talking about negative thinking loops, but it had been given a lot of labels over the years. And I said to her, there's nothing wrong with you. And she started to cry, like just the relief for somebody to say there is nothing wrong with you, that you can change this. You've developed a habit and you can develop new habits. And it's just a matter of learning how. And you're a testament to that. You'd got into some habits that had you on a spiral going downwards. And now you've got into some habits that have got you in a spiral going upwards, which is just so exciting to watch.
Yeah. Thank you. And, it's like when you put a label on it, because I dealt with anxiety as well. I was medicated for a while and I thought, I've got anxiety. This is how it's going to be. We did. And it was like, well, I've got that label now, which, hence why the wine was involved. But I didn't realize that I could actually change that and that I could just release that label, when I had the proper help and guidance. So
yeah, it's amazing. So Michelle, tell everybody about your business and your program and how they can reach out to you if they want to know more.
Yeah, so I've my business is called The Healthy Happy Nurse. I have a 12-week program, which is what I wrote when I was working with you, Tracy, in Purpose Prosperity, and it's the health and happiness formula. So it's a 12-week group program that helps women who are feeling burnt out and overwhelmed and frustrated to, living a life where they're fully tuned in, clear, connected, feel really empowered and confident. So that's my group program. And I've also got a few little other programs now, because what I've noticed is since my journey to, from where I was so overwhelmed to now, and this started happening when I was working with you, Tracy, I started to manifest. And so I've heavily really studied manifestation now, and the process of manifestation and how to, co-create with the universe and call in those dreams and desires. And so I've got a lot of, little mini courses around manifestation and things like that now, because what happens is when you're feeling good, you just attract more, more goodness in.
Absolutely, you do.
And that's where I've sort of gone. So what a lot of the women who have done my program they've started to attract in so much goodness, and they're like, what's the next step? Like, what's the next step? And I'm like, well, now you can manifest, like you just call it in what you dream of now, whereas once I didn't, and they certainly didn't as well, just have that capacity because of, the energy and where they were at.
It's true. It's so true. Like you did, a lot of soul pleasers start to manifest because their vibration raises, because they feel happier. Like it's just a natural outcome, is once you're happier, you manifest. So yeah, it's pretty exciting to be able to just keep creating a better and better life. Everything just keeps getting better and better.
Yeah. So most of my stuff is on my Instagram, which is Michelle Gordon _coach, or thehealthyhappiness.thinkific.com.
Great. I will share those links so that people can reach out to you. Thank you so much for being here, Michelle. It's just been amazing talking to you. And I really appreciate you being so vulnerable about where you were back in 2017 when you reached out to me, because it's just like chalk and cheese. And I just want people to know what's possible. It's amazing how much you can change.
Thank you. I have so much gratitude to you. And every now and then I send you a little message going, oh, so grateful, Tracy. So thank you.
Oh, you're welcome. I feel just as grateful that you reached out to me. It's just such a two-way street. So Rachel, thank you so much, Michelle. This was so relative to me. I'm a nurse, an empath. Oh, perfect. Great. Thank you, everybody, for your messages. Thank you so much for supporting the Self-Belief series. I will post this on YouTube and send the link out to you so that you can share it with everyone you know. Thank you, Michelle. Lots of love to you all. Thanks for being here.
Thanks.
Bye.
Bye-bye.